Ecofictologists, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lovis, and this month I have decided to dedicate some time to celebrating ecofiction in short story form. I've pretty much only talked about novels so far, apart from one video on films and another on video games, but the month of March is all about short story anthologies and collections. I've never really considered myself a short story fan, but recently I've realized that that's just because I haven't given myself the chance, really, to fall in love with the form. Maybe subconsciously I decided that I wouldn't like it. But I've therefore missed out on such a variety of ecofiction imaginings that I'm really glad that I've given myself a chance to discover it now. A short story is anything between 1,000 and 10,000 words, generally speaking, and maybe in my mind I thought that that wasn't enough time to really immerse the reader in world building or the characters or to deliver any kind of emotional punch. But all it really means is that the author really needs to understand their craft. It means that they've honed their skill for storytelling to be concise. Really good short story writers can pack the same punch into those few thousand words that you can experience from a full-length novel. So actually it could be argued that writing a short story is actually harder than writing a novel in terms of craft, because you need to establish your stakes, you need to develop your characters, you need to hook the reader so that they care about those characters, and you need to have something happen in a fraction of the time that you have to do all of those things in a novel. I'm really looking forward to talking about the nitty-gritty of this some more, so let's just get right into it. It's interesting to compare the experience of reading an ecofiction novel versus the experience of reading an ecofiction short story. If you think of a novel as kind of a meal, like a full, beautiful, satisfying meal, then an anthology of short stories would be the equivalent of a buffet. You still get a satisfying meal, but you get a meal full of so many different flavors, you have so many different courses, you can taste things from all around the world, and the same is true for an anthology of short stories. You can sample so many different kinds of ecofiction works. Short stories by lots of different authors based around a similar idea or maybe responding to a certain prompt might be collected into an anthology. In preparation for this episode, I read my way through quite a few short story anthologies, and what I find I like the most is the variety that you get. When I was looking for anthologies to read, I read ones that were dedicated to works of ecofiction, as well as ones where there just happened to be works of ecofiction in there, but the prompt might be something more broad, like looking towards the future. I find that ecofiction narratives tend to crop up when looking towards the future, because as a society I think we've accepted that you cannot look towards the future without acknowledging that our environment will have changed, our technology is going to have to change to cope with that, and hopefully our behavior will have changed as well. For example, the Forward collection edited by Blake Crouch, where the prompt was, what does it feel like to change the world through some kind of creation or other? What are the consequences of that creation, be it technological or whatever else? Pointing out the inevitability that creators of technology and new methods don't always know, can't always predict where their creations are going to end up, how they're going to be used, or how they're going to be developed. Some of the stories focused very much on societal values and technologies, but they would still mention that the characters drove an electric car. It's kind of up to you whether you think that's enough to make it ecofiction. Others, for example, the short story Emergency Skin by N.K. Jemisin, a very well-known name in the ecofiction sphere, would most definitely be counted as ecofiction. where she portrays a society that has left Earth and kind of looks back on it to see how it has changed, whether the catastrophe that it was when they left is still the same, whether the climate is completely uninhabitable, the land destroyed, or whether it has recovered. I really enjoyed that short story. Of course, it was wonderfully written. What else do you expect from N.K. Jemisin? So in some of these types of short story anthologies or collections, you'll get a range of intensity levels, if you will, and what counts as ecofiction and what doesn't is then up to the individual reader. Often, though, the entire anthology will be dedicated to works of ecofiction, which has the wonderful result of collecting so many different perspectives on kind of a more focused area. The call might be something in the eco direction, but it could still be very broad, something like a positive outlook on how we will live with our environment in the future. For example, one competition that's actually running right now until April 12th, I think, is the Grist Imagine 2200 competition. And they are asking for short stories that imagine the next 180 years of equitable climate progress, and specifically looking for hopeful, forward-looking stories. On their website, they give some examples of some topics that the short stories might cover. How will we move around cities in the future? What will we eat, drink, wear, use, live in? How will we hold our relationships to the land, resources, and one another? What kind of world do you, as an ancestor, want to build? So even though the prompt might seem specific at first, what is accepted is actually everything to do with society, which is huge when you think about it. And so if you ask a lot of different people a broad question like that, you're going to get a lot of different perspectives, and different perspectives is exactly what we need when looking for a solution for some of the issues that we're facing right now. It's so interesting to see people's different takes on it. Some will come at it from an economic perspective, some a technological perspective, biological, psychological, sociological, political. There's so many different angles that you can come at this question from. So I have really come to appreciate the buffet of ecofiction short story anthologies. I think these anthologies and submission calls also have an interesting side effect in that a lot of writers who write short stories and are therefore on the lookout for these kinds of competition calls might not necessarily have previously thought to write ecofiction or to put the environment and our relationship with it kind of at the heart of what they're writing. But if they see this submission call, they might go, oh, well, maybe I can write that. Maybe they'll dabble in a genre that they've never written in before. And maybe that makes them think a little bit. These are creative people, they're storytellers. And if we can get creative people to come at a problem from 1,000 different perspectives, then maybe we can make some progress towards actual behavioral change. So I think these short story anthology calls often serve to widen the influence of ecofiction as a genre, if not a movement. If you want a wonderful example of this, let's talk about Solarpunk, which is often found in short story form. If you want to learn about this term in a little bit more detail, I will link my definitions video up at the top that I did, oh my god, almost a year ago. Very briefly, Solarpunk focuses on imagining a future where we live more sustainably, we rely more on renewable resources, and we have made social change toward equality and justice. So by definition, it's a very optimistic genre. This genre started in Brazil in the early 2000s, but it really kind of made its way into the public awareness in 2012 with the publication of the short story anthology Solarpunk, Ecological and Fantastical Stories in a Sustainable World. This has now been translated into English, and I will link that below. And now there are actually more people being solarpunk and practicing it as a social movement than there are people writing in that genre. It took off in art, music, architecture, fashion, and behavior, as well as literature. So this is a perfect example of how thinking about some of these things that might be considered solarpunk has actually turned into behavioral change, almost a philosophy and an outlook on life, which is the ideal outcome, really. It makes sense that Solarpunk is found in short form a lot because, by definition, Solarpunk looks towards kind of a utopia, and in a utopia, conflict is kind of hard to find, so without conflict, it's really difficult to keep your reader's attention for an entire novel. The conflict could be, the difficulties that you would face on the road to utopia. But often, if you're trying to represent what a utopia looks like when you've arrived, then having these short snapshots of life is actually a really beautiful way of representing that. So, in the next couple weeks, I'm going to be reviewing a few short story anthologies and collections in the hopes of maybe opening the minds of some of my viewers if they, like me, maybe have some subconscious bias that they are not aware of. Or if you already love short stories, then hopefully I can give you a few recommendations that you might not have heard of. So if you're interested in this, then be sure to check in the next couple weeks where I'll be dedicating my channel to short form storytelling. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please give it a thumbs up, and remember to subscribe to my channel and hit that bell so you get notified every time I upload new content. If you have any short story recommendations, I'm 100% all ears. I want to read more of them, so leave them in the comments section below. And if this video has tempted you to try out some short stories, then also let me know that, because I would really love to know how these videos are affecting you. As always, if you like what I do and would like to support me, then head on over to patreon.com/Ecofictology and become a patron. Your monthly donation will buy me my next book, such as some of the short story collections that I will be reviewing in this month. And it also supports a good cause by supporting Love the Oceans, a marine conservation organization operating out of Mozambique. If you want to talk more about ecofiction in all its wonderful forms, then join me and Mary Woodbury on our Discord server, Rewilding Our Stories. The invite link is in the description below. There you will find lots of resources, book recommendations, including short stories, and a supportive community that gets just as excited about this stuff as you do. If Discord isn't your thing, you can join the Facebook group. Invite for that is also in the description. And you can enjoy the same benefits as the Discord group, a place to have a great discussion about ecofiction. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week, Ecofictologists.